If you get this excited over boots on the ground in Iran, I don't think you should have a say in politics. Folks, welcome back to The Narrative with me, your host, William, the host with the most and the most Reagan paraphernalia. I want to take a look at somebody special today. If you're a fan of my streams, you might see me talking about him somewhat often. You know it's Kestenbaum. You know it's gonna be him. Come on. Oh, I hate this fucking guy. I just fucking hate him so much. Guys, I really fucking hate this guy. Words can't express how much I just don't like this fucking guy. Streams that, by the way, you should absolutely join sometime if you like the content on my channel. But for those of you who are new, be sure to like, subscribe, all that. I don't think I have to tell you what to do on YouTube. I mean, come on. I'm speaking, of course, about PragerU's own kosher crusader, one Shabbos Kestenbaum. We knew it was coming. I mean, I've teased talking about him in a more full-length way several times throughout my videos, and I think today is finally the day. Especially as we're approaching what is basically definitive boots on the ground in Iran, it seems more than appropriate to talk about Shabbos Kestenbaum, somebody who is a very public crusader for boots on the ground in Iran. Now, you might be expecting this to be a video of me making fun of him for being Israel's top guy, but I mean, his name's Shabbos Kestenbaum. Do I have to tell you that he's Israel's top guy? I think that's just pretty innate. Nothing really surprising there. No, I want to talk more specifically about a grander movement that he represents, a grander mindset that he represents that has its roots both in history, but especially in modern history. Till then, let's hop into the conversation. Now, I normally start these episodes off with maybe a tweet or a video clip, something to sort of ease our way into it. But when it comes to one Shabbos Kestenbaum, I literally can't decide which clip or tweet to show. They're all so good. There was that time when he told us that free speech should be rolled back, or his great entrance at the Republican National Convention. I mean, this guy is a definitive Appalachian certified union job coal mine. But I think what needs to be the most called out with him is his court case. A court case that's actually literally in all of his social bios. Kestenbaum v. Harvard. What people don't know, though, is that most court records are public. You can just go read them. And so I thought for this video, I should take a look at his very famous court case. Let me remind you, it was this court case, Kestenbaum v. Harvard, that put him on the map. After October 7th, I'm sure all of you are aware, protests broke out at many colleges and universities across the country, one most notably occurring at Harvard University, where one Shabbos Kestenbaum was attending at their divinity school. I guess he wanted to be a rabbi. Basically, protests break out. And mind you, these were very liberal protests. It's a high institution. It's Harvard University. It's not really known for its staunch conservative stances. I mean, they weren't hosting AFPAC or a Patriot Front rally. I mean, this was liberals, liberal leftist types. But nevertheless, this made Shabbos very, very uncomfortable. How dare these people express their free speech and criticisms of a foreign conflict that we're directly funding? How dare they do so anywhere near one Shabbos Kestenbaum? So him, along with several other students of a similar background, sued Harvard. They tried to sue them under Title IV in the Civil Rights Act. Now, let me note, the first judge that this case was shown to almost immediately moved for it to be dismissed, basically saying, yeah, this is bullshit. Clearly, you don't actually feel that your civil rights have been infringed. You just don't like what they're protesting about, which you have a right to dislike it, but they also have a right to protest. The reason they did that was to create more and more press, to drum up more press about it. Obviously, maybe some of you recognize Kestenbaum from the RNC.
My name is Shabbos Kestenbaum.
Shabbos Kestenbaum, I am a proud
Orthodox Jew
proud plaintiff suing Harvard University
for its failure to combat anti-Semitism.
Wherein he walked out on stage wearing a kippah the size of his entitlement and proudly proclaimed that he was suing Harvard, which eventually Harvard caved to pressure and apparently behind the scenes closed the case on a settlement and by publicly accepting the IHRA's public definition on anti-Semitism, one that includes anti-Zionism, or really just public anti-Israel sentiments being considered anti-Semitic. Let me also note the IHRA also says that the gospel of the Bible is anti-Semitic. This is who we're working with. Now, You may be saying to yourself, well, it seems like this guy allies himself with sort of status quo establishment liberals. It seems like he also has a very pointed political interest in the state of Israel. If you say that, you'd be right, because Shabbos Kestenbaum was a Democrat. Yes, you heard me correctly. He was a Democrat, a supposedly progressive Democrat, pro-open border, pro-Green New Deal, pro-everything. However, he claims that he had a change of heart around October 7th. God, I wonder why. What could have possibly happened around October 7th that would have caused our friend Kestenbaum here to completely rethink his political values that he had held for decades and his family had held for decades? Do I have to spell it out for you? He's playing for his team. He's pro his team. He's modern Orthodox. He was the president of his college's Hillel. He's studied in Israel. I mean, this is the most like Israel first guy you can find, next to maybe Jared Kushner. I remember when I said he was a progressive. He was a progressive in supporting Bernie Sanders, literally the one Jewish candidate. So I wonder in that circumstance what he supported Sanders on. Maybe it was his healthcare policy. And by the way, after just randomly deciding to become a Republican, he was almost immediately given the stage at several prominent Republican events and then was handed his own show at PragerU. Literally just given to him. It's been, 3 years since October 7th? And yet he has managed to go from progressive Democrat to literally at like the highest rung of conservatism, having met with Donald Trump several times and receiving direct briefings from the White House. I mean, this is like the highest level you can get to as a journalist or an activist. If we can see this represented in him, we have to ask ourselves, what does that represent in the grander scheme of things? What is happening here? Because he's still very pro-migrant, very pro-social liberalism. It's very clear that he's bringing his stuff with him. He got, I guess, expelled from the Democrat Party because the left has done a better job rooting this stuff out than the right. But it's very clear he just brought this stuff with him. Like he just brought his liberalism with him and just dropped it at the front door of the Republican Party, and he has been accepted home as our prodigal son. All of this begs a bigger question about the concept of neoconservatism. Neoconservatism, in the simplest terms, is just socially liberal, fiscally and militarily conservative. That's really all it is. And of course, neoconservatism, let me note, has a very distinctly kosher flavor to it. The doctrine of neoconservatism being written by one Irving Kristol, the son of Jewish immigrants from Eastern Europe. He was the first to come up with the neoconservative doctrine. Also the father of Bill Kristol, creator of the Weekly Standard, the same who would go on to promote the war in Iraq. In the 1940s, Irving Kristol was part of the New York Intellectuals, a group of socialists, like literally coming from the Young People's Socialist League, who were incredibly anti-Soviet. This is because the Trotskyite faction of the Soviets had recently been expelled from the Soviet Union, Kristol's family being part of that. So he's a public intellectual. He's bringing with him these sort of socialist ideas that are very, very concerned with the concept of Zionism, very, very pro-Zionism. And so he comes into America and becomes basically the first neoconservative. What makes him distinctly neoconservative is the fact that he's socially liberal. Like I said, he's a socialist, but he's incredibly hawkish. He wants to fight the Soviet Union, the place that, let me note, they just got kicked out of. Basically, the guy is like super anti-Soviet, and this is where neoconservatism sort of finds itself, as being anti-Soviet, especially anti-Stalinist specifically. And the reason why this stuff was able to take over our institutions was because of the Cold War. I don't know if you know this, but Cold War, that was a big conflict that we had with the Soviet Union. So what's the angle there? How did this stuff, this neoconservatism, this Trotskyism, this desire to defeat the Soviet Union, but desire to keep the values of like socialism and Marxism in society, where did this all form it, and how did it get into our government? Well, you have to understand the Cold Warriors. To understand neoconservatism's rise, we have to understand the mindset of sort of like early CIA and early intelligence. See, what doesn't get noted is that like most of the early CIA and early Mossad had a huge overlap. This is because Jews coming into America represented a very, very valuable asset against the Soviets. Many of them were very anti-Stalin, very Trotskyite, like our friend Crystal here. They spoke Russian and other languages found in the Soviet Union, and they were deeply political. They cared about the cause of Zionism and wanted the goals of Zionism to be furthered. And so this represented an interest in the American government. People like Meyer Lansky, which he needs a whole video. I got to do a whole video on Meyer Lansky. But to give you the skinny on him, Jewish mobster, responsible for the first intelligence blackmail ring. Honestly, like the proto-Epstein, really. Played a foundational role in the founding of the CIA as well as the founding of Mossad. Really directly the founding of the State of Israel. This is the tradition that we're talking about here. Basically, our government wanted to fight the Soviet government, and in doing so, we enlisted the help of all these Jewish immigrants. And that unfortunately spread over time and allowed the doctrine of neoconservatism to be shoehorned into our government, more specifically in the Republican Party. But okay, so neoconservatism, this idea of being socially liberal, internationalist, free trade, and especially friendly with Israel, that gets into our government. What's the pinnacle of this? What is the apex of this? Why do we now speak about it with such contempt? Well, like a lot of things recently, we have to go back to Yinon. God damn it, I did a whole video on Oded Yinon and the Yinon plan, and yet here we are again. For those who don't know anything about the Yinon plan, number one, I have a whole video on it. You should absolutely go watch. But two, the skinny on it, in the 1980s, Oded Yinon, public Israeli intellectual, he writes this document where he says that Israel needs to destabilize all of its neighbors, that Israel is surrounded by all these strong countries, and the only way Israel's going to win is if they can exploit the little sectarian differences in all of these surrounding countries and get them to fall to infighting, basically. And the reason I'm bringing this up again in this conversation about the colonization of the right is because there's no better example of the neoconservative climax than the Iraq War. Remember Irving Kristol, the guy we just talked about? It was actually his son, Bill Kristol, who would go on to be the leading voice in our government supporting the Iraq War. Without him, we would not have gone to war in Iraq. And Iraq was Yinon Manifest. It was taking on Israel's latest adversary at the time and destabilizing the government via sectarian divides. However, the war became deeply unpopular because, and again, I don't know if you know this, war kills people. It kills soldiers, and lots of Americans died in that war. It was a huge burden on the taxpayer. People very quickly realized the war was pointless. It was fucking pointless. And so it's from there that neoconservatism becomes unpopular. They start hating it. The American public turns on it. Because see, for neoconservatism to work, the American public has to be okay with it. And the American public, they were cool with it since Reagan. Reagan was that first hit, felt really good. But the Iraq War, that was the last hit before they go to rehab. And again, like we talked about, this is where MAGA comes from. MAGA really spawned as a reaction to the Iraq War. And thus, neoconservatism is, at least in the public eye, dead. It is no longer cool to be a neoconservative. Now you may be asking yourself, okay, well, if it's no longer cool to be a neoconservative, and clearly we see all these figures on X and all these figures in the news rallying against this supposed neocon former establishment, well, why are we talking about it then? Doesn't that mean the story's over? Oh, my sweet, sweet American children. I wish that were the case. See, what needs to be noted is that neoconservatism works when it's not called neoconservatism. This is because, again, neoconservatism, it is Trotskyism. It's just a form of Marxism. Neoconservative is just the American form of that. And now they've done the same with MAGA. They have shoehorned this in again with MAGA. And again, the same interest is there. That's always been there. See, Shabbos Kestenbaum represents everything I've spoken about when it comes to ethnic loyalism, ethnic tribalism, ethnic supremacism. The thing about the neoconservatives, if you couldn't have guessed it by all the names that I shared with you, they were the first time that this supremacy entered into our government, that internationalism, that Zionism entered into our government in a real, official, and elected way. And this colonization of MAGA, it's no different. But again, it requires the people, requires the national mandate. It requires the people. See, because Shabbos Kestenbaum doesn't care about American lives. He just doesn't. I mean, anybody who's in favor of boots on the ground in Iran, who is going to make a million excuses and justifications for the war in Iran. Well, that is the pinnacle of dual loyalty, of being anti-American. It just is. I mean, I literally don't even know what to tell you. Now we have the foresight of the internet. Now we have the experience of Iraq, which, mind you, all of the language we're seeing now from people like Kestenbaum in this grander sphere of MAGA influencers and this new generation of neoconservatives, it's all the same shit that we heard in Iraq. This terrible foreign authoritarian regime that tortures its people is so close to building a nuclear weapon that they're absolutely going to use on America. And so we have to preemptively go and stop them. And even the dissenting views are the same that we've heard during the Iraq War, that actually, no, this is a secret plot to get oil. That it's, oh, well, actually, this is a very large oil producing nation, and so the plot here is to get oil, and that they're tricking you. But that line is just the second layer of the Matrix, because the real reason was always the same. It was to follow the Yan'an plan. Because mind you, when we fought in Iraq, all the neoconservatives said it was, oh, we're going against authoritarian regime and yada, yada, yada. And all the liberals said, no, it's actually, you're going to get oil. That's what it is. They're trying to take the oil. We need to stop them from trying to take the oil through all these unjust means. We literally never saw a barrel of that oil. Never. They're like oil production, like quite literally never fully recovered because we blew it up. Like we bombed their oil fields. I don't know if I need to tell you, but if you bomb an oil field, it goes away like forever. So clearly it was not about oil. What was achieved, though, was the Yan'an plan. That's what was achieved. Saddam was taken out, and Iraq has been reduced into what is basically tribalism. Another set of poor, destabilized lands full of marauding Islamist gangs. No real future in sight. No real ability to challenge regional powers such as State of Israel. This is where we are again. This is the goal again, is they are attempting to sell us this line again, because the goal was always to bring neoconservatism back into republicanism. And this is what Shabbos Kestenbaum is. Not only is he an ethnic loyalist, he's ideological in his ethnic loyalism. Anybody from that tribe has learned by now in this like over 100-year struggle that neoconservatism, that Trotskyism, that this is their greatest mode of garnering political power. If you keep a strong Israel, that if you keep the base, the masses happy with all these bullshit lines about patriotism and this culture war sectarian nonsense, that then you can achieve the actual political aim, which is transferring the power and the status and the prosperity of the United States to one small country in the Middle East. And so this is what Kestenbaum is. It's not Israel first, it's America last. That's what needs to be noted here, because many will accuse him of being Israel first, and I'm sure he's prepared all sorts of arguments for that, but no one is accusing him of what's really truly the problem, is the fact that he's America last, that in order for his victory conditions to be achieved, it requires our destruction, our decay. There is not a world in which Shabbos Kestenbaum gets what he wants out of politics and we get to keep existing. It doesn't happen that way. In order for him to get what he wants, we have to go and fight Iran and destabilize Iran, which grants Israel the hegemonic power of the region, which creates a superpower that inevitably flattens ours, because we no longer have the control over global oil. They do. We no longer have the global control over logistics. They do. See, it's characters like Kestenbaum with all of this bullshit that he sells us, this wannabe Shapiro TPUSA rhetoric and all the neoconservatism that comes with it. This is what creates this grand divide of truth. See, it's a well-known fact that I, William, Will Sexton, your friend, your pal, your favorite chud, that I used to be very left-wing. And ironically enough, maybe in almost like a bizarro world version of Mr. Kestenbaum here, I still do hold and profess some left-wing beliefs. But the problem with the left and their criticism of the state of Israel is that they're not willing to get to the root of the problem. That root being ethnic affinity. Remember how I said that he supported Bernie Sanders very clearly on the premise that Bernie Sanders would have been the first Jewish president. Bernie Sanders is very publicly against Israel. That was one of his things, that he was like, oh, I'm a Jewish president, but I don't like Israel. And his voting record does reflect that. He didn't care because, again, tribalism's there. He knows he's playing for his team. He'll totally jump ship. He'll totally jump sides. He'll welcome himself into the Republican Party and sacrifice basically anything he believed in solely if this one belief gets to stay, that being the ethnic cohesion and power base of his people. It's this that makes him fundamentally anti-American. And the funniest part is, think about the circumstance. I mean, why did he have to leave the Democrat Party? Well, it's because people over there were doing the same thing. Migrants were working for migrants, Muslims for Muslims. I mean, this is the pinnacle of what I'm talking about. The problem is America is descending into tribalism. It's descending into ethnic enclaves, into tribal politics, and all of that starts with crystal neoconservatism, with the introduction of these people and this ideology into America. See, prior to all of this, American politics was a very open discussion kind of thing. It wasn't different groups vying for their interests. It was one group, the American people, debating on the best ways to solve issues that affected all of us. Now it seems politics is a debate about what the issues actually are. Because what's an issue for some is a benefit for many. It's the goal for many. This is also why these MAGA influencers have become so increasingly sectarian. I mean, if you follow me on X, which you absolutely should, you'd be aware as to how much these MAGA influencers fucking hate me. I mean, they really do not like Virlium. And it's not because of my wacky ways or flamboyant affect. They have seemingly no problem with that. After all, most of them are getting money from Peter Thiel, and they work with Dave Rubin, two guys who literally bought babies. So they clearly don't care about things that are more untraditional. No, what they especially dislike about me is the fact that I'm not a sectarian, that I'm not a partisan. This is because the actual interests of the American people aren't partisan. See, neoconservatism was the rise of partisanship. The idea that no longer were left and right approaches to the same problem or different perspectives on the same problems. No, this is where politics began to be completely different groups entirely. That what were the problems to one became the goal of others. And so now we've reached this place of sheer division where it feels like every single day we are inching closer to a national divorce, if not another fucking civil war. But then again, one of the hallmarks of neoconservatism, the hallmarks of something like a Shabbos Kestenbaum, is sensationalism. And I think you can already see this, that basically all of these influencers are trying to sell us on this line that radical Islam is here, that we are days away from the Grand Caliphate taking over DC. Something that, by the way, Kestenbaum would have no problem with if the Caliphate liked Israel. Fucking clearly. I don't even think I need to say that. Literally, I just opened his Twitter right now. One of the first things here is about how Tucker Carlson is actually a secret Iranian agent attempting to take over the White House. This is what they're trying to give you, is this sensationalist sectarian bullshit, all to cover up the fact that this is just Iraq 2. Or sorry, Iraq 3, because we already did 2 Iraq wars for these fucking people. So Iraq 3, this time with less Al Gore and more actual Gore, because thousands upon hundreds of thousands of our young men will have to die for this to be achieved. Deaths that I promise you, Kestenbaum will not share grief in, because if his ability to flip-flop parties is emblematic of anything, it's the fact that he doesn't care. This is not a sentimental guy. This is a guy who cares only about his own, the benefit of his own. I promise you, he probably has a fucking apartment waiting for him in Tel Aviv that he will fuck off to if they win and we fall apart. And guess what? If they lose and America Firstism wins and we turn on Israel, he probably has an apartment in Ukraine or England or fucking wherever else. He has some place to go because he is, as I've said it before, America last. So all of this is really to say and to state Kestenbaum is the poster boy of the colonization of MAGA. And he is the pinnacle example of why coalition is needed, why sectarianism is bullshit that is being pushed into your home by these people. And granted, yeah, so is forms of radicalism. I mean, the left has a lot of de-radicalization to do, and I think there's a lot of work to do there. But I'd argue that the vast majority of people just want better for the American people. A better, that let me know, would be Kestenbaum's worst nightmare. But folks, that's going to do it for us today on this episode of The Narrative. I hope you enjoyed. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe. I mean, all that. Come on. But folks, with all that being said, as I always say to you, God bless you and God bless America.